What's up, everybody? Welcome to episode 7 of the Game of the Year 2020 Awards Showcase Spectacular here at Rocket Punch. I am Cameron. Seth is here with me. We're going strong here. We're almost at the end, Seth. It's funny how we get so excited at the start of these things, and then I feel like they just we go through them like that, and then all of a sudden we're talking about Game of the Year at the end of the month.
Once your eyes roll back in your head and you feel the bloodlust of Game of the Year, it just flies right through. It's like a predator hunting its prey. We're like Jaws.
It's like a fever dream.
It's a fever dream.
Like the Game of the Year is like the Predator, and we're Arnold Schwarzenegger after the mud has wiped off, and we're in the corridor, and we're like, "Come on, come on,
use me now." You know what's even better is that technically, the category that we're doing right now, the Predator is eligible for. Because there was a Predator game.
Oh, God.
This year.
There was a Predator game. I have not played that.
Yeah. Hold on, I got to update my list real quick. I'm not going to give it to the Predator.
You have time to do that because I'll give everybody the lowdown here before we get rolling here. Of course, guys, if you're continuing to listen to this, this is episode 7 of our 10-part series here for Game of the Year 2020 at Rocket Punch. If you haven't listened to the first 6 episodes, go listen to the first 6 episodes. They're in the feed or video or whatever. However you're listening to this, they're available for you to listen to. Guys, this is the start of part 3. This episode 7, 8, and 9 are the last couple of episodes right before we do Game of the Year. Overall, it should be a whole lot of fun there. But remember, guys, we're streaming and premiering the episodes live each Sunday over on twitch.tv/rocketpunchlive. If you want to check the episodes out first, you can check them out over there. But if you do miss them, you can also, throughout that week, we'll be releasing them on YouTube and on podcast services. Just type in Rocket Punch Show and look in the feed for those episodes there. But we've talked a lot about about fun stuff in games. We're going to continue that trend with starting with this episode for part 3. This is episode 7. This is for favorite character. Giving some backstory here. Favorite character, we're looking at for the character in gaming that impressed you with their depth, performance, and impact within the game. It can mean a lot of things, of course, to a lot of different people. Who are favorite characters? Note that I did not say best character. This is a little bit of a change. I know, Seth, we talked about this before of kind of like best and favorite, and we really wanted to lean more towards favorite, really because favorite is something like character can be very subjective. There are going to be things that people look for and like in the character that other people are not going to like into, and so we thought that for this specific category, saying best character was a little disingenuous into kind of what we were trying to do. But if you've been listening up to this point, the same rigmarole is going down, guys. Seth and I each have 2 runners-up and a winner for this category. We're going to discuss through them, and then afterwards we'll give a few quick honorable mentions that we'll discuss at the end of our discussions. But with that being said, I've got the coin, Seth.
A coin.
The dark side and the light side.
Dark side represent. It's going to be dark side. I'm calling it right now, dude. It's dark side. Why even flip it? Just go ahead and do your thing. Give it dark side.
And the winner is the dark side.
Dark side. Listen, dude.
Side.
Every time. Every time. Every time.
So with the dark side being the on the top, that means, Seth, you get to go first. So give us the breakdown here. What is one of your runners up for favorite character?
Yes. So I was very adamant about us making this category favorite character because it is. I think that everybody, depending on your personal gaming journey, has different interactions, and there are characters that are really mainstream that everybody kind of likes, right? And we're going to probably talk about some of those characters at some point in this. However, there is one character from this year that is a completely side character, kind of written off, And I will go ahead and say that I might talk a little bit about his story throughout the game, but I am talking about Bobby. Bobby the Bob from Paper Mario and the Origami King. Now,
Oh my god!
if you don't know what I'm talking about here, so Paper Mario Origami King came out this year, and throughout the course of the game, you meet different characters that can kind of like join your party temporarily, right? So one of the first ones of those that you meet, those side characters, is Bobby. You jump on a sky tram, and I'm going to talk a little bit about his character, but I'm going to try not to spoil anything about his main story arc.
Mhm.
But essentially, Bobby is a Bob that you probably know and love, but he has amnesia, and he does not remember who he is, what he's supposed to be doing, or where he belongs or where he came from. So
Okay.
he is such a great character because it's Paper Mario. There's a lot of isms about that franchise, right? Like a lot of people have a lot of like baggage tied up in that franchise being like, oh, it's not as good as the old games, da 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 da. But if there's one thing I'll say for Paper Mario and the Origami King is it is a beautifully written game that is genuinely funny if you like Mario. Like it gets the humor of Mario really, really well. And you don't really see that in Mario. Like Mario's not a funny character, right? Like he maybe does funny
Not
things from time to time.
particularly, yeah.
You don't see like Mario being a goofball. But in this game in particular, all the side characters do a great job of like adding to that. And Bobby surpasses all of them. All right, he is a true champion. First off, his attacks are OP. He can attack basically everyone on the board as like a bonus attack. His story arc, without getting into too many details, I will tell you, he discovers that he has this urge that his Bob that's kind of like here I'll just say he has this urge to explode, but he can't.
Okay.
And that creates a lot of
Boy, a lot of ways that could go down.
A lot of ways, right? And so it's just one of those things where he comes into the story at a time like right as you're kind of getting warmed up to the whole idea of the game. You're kind of starting to understand the core principles of exploring and whatnot, and then all of a sudden you have this character that's kind of following you around. And what's really fun is that the things you're interacting with, he's very frequently like adding in commentary as well. So it really feels like having a companion. It reminds me a lot of like when you would have your companions in like Chrono Trigger and things like that. And they would, depending on which companion you had with you, you'd get different bits of dialogue. Right now, that's not really the case here because he's, coming in at a certain point and then, leaving at different points and then coming back in at other points. So like, it's a little bit more scripted than that. But honestly, Bobby's just a really fun, laid back, enjoyable character. He is my first runner-up for favorite character of 2020 just because of the smiles. Like that was a game I really fell into, and of all the characters in that game, Bobby was definitely the most pleasant to hang out with. So that's my first runner-up for favorite character in 2020.
That's a good start to the conversations here. I like that. I like where this is going.
You might say it's the bomb.
Oh my God, let me roll my eyes. Oh boy, that was painful here.
All right, get us out of here, Chewy.
I'll do my best here. So one of my runners up for favorite character is going to be the Fall Guys from Fall Guys Ultimate Knockout. There is not much that I have to say in regards to the Fall Guys, because there really isn't a whole lot to say except for the fact that they are these creatures, things we don't know. Like they look like Stay Puft Marshmallow Men, they're just like running around on this game show trying to get the crown, and they're acting goofy and silly every time they do it. And you can take them and you can put little outfits on them and make them look like, dragons or knights or princesses or
Doom Guy.
Or Doom Guy eventually in a couple of days here. You can make them look like the Doom Guy. It's just, they're really fun, and I just enjoy it when I play that game and all that fun. I just like, so it puts a smile on my face how creative the Fall Guys are. in their concept and kind of what they are. I remember there was this whole thing when Fall Guys came out of like, what are the Fall Guys? Like, what are they made of? And like the official Fall Guys Twitter had like these art concepts of like what the insides of the Fall Guys looked like, and some of them were like very disturbing.
I
But it
hated
was
them. I hated
it
them.
was so much fun though.
They were the worst.
To kind of see these Fall Guys and see them pop up, and like in the cool thing is that how customizable they are. So that whole event where the Fall Guys group had campaign started, like whoever donated the most money to a charity, they would create a skin for their company or brand or whatever in Fall Guys, and like all the support that came out for that was really something exciting and whatnot. It was really cool to see all these Fall Guys in these cute, crazy, wild, interesting looking costumes. So
You know what I want to see, Cameron? I want to see the David Attenborough VO documentary about the Fall Guys. Just the Fall Guys, a distant relative of the Minion. Like, played completely seriously.
notice
But
how
for
the Fall Guys try to get through this barrier. Up, and he's fallen down. It has been said sometimes that it could take up to 20 minutes for a Fall Guy to recover off of their back. Interesting
Exactly.
stuff. Wonderful.
That was a great choice. Actually, I was trying to think to myself, I was like, do Fall Guys belong in this category? And since you awarded it, then yes, they do.
Yes, they do.
Because they are really adorable, and I love them very much. So,
But that is one of my runners up for favorite.
Great first pick. So my next character, gonna be digging. We're a whole change of pace here. We're going from Bobby to a character that the moment that I met her on screen, I was like, this is my BFF. We're going to hang out together, and I'm going to do whatever it takes to make her my friend. And that character is Pan Am from Cyberpunk 2077. Have you met Pan Am?
No.
You have not? Okay.
I don't know.
So I'm going to do my best to keep spoilers. Again, this is not the category I really want to bust into spoilers for. But to give a little bit of context, Pan Am is I'm going to say like a mechanic. It's that kind of mechanic persona. She's very sassy. She's definitely the type of person to speak her mind, which when I was playing Cyberpunk, my V was very, I played my V very much like that. Like, she was a hacker girl, but also like would call you on your BS the minute you tried to spew it. And Pan Am was exactly the same. She also has some really awesome roots in nomads and their tribes and things like that. So a lot of her story revolves around like the nomad, the different clans and whatnot. So you get to learn a little bit more about the nomad. And I'm not going to spoil anything about her particular campaign, but let's just say that some of her missions are pretty wild, considering that Cyberpunk is a first-person like action role-playing game. That's kind of an FPS. Her missions feel like a breath of fresh air. They don't really overuse the gimmick.
Okay.
But there is a really cool, awesome gimmick they introduced that you get to utilize throughout that. And I will say also that there is one of the interesting thing about Cyberpunk, the most interesting thing about Cyberpunk is the way that it utilizes these side characters and how you tell your V story. And that even goes up, and I'm not going to, again, not spoil anything, but your interactions with the side characters, such as Pan Am and some of the others, do impact the way you approach the ending as well. So it's one of those things where you may never meet Pan Am. If you're just beelining the story, you may not actually meet her, but it is one of those games. I was kind of say it's like Mass Effect 2 in that regard. If you're playing Mass Effect 2, you can beeline the game. However, by doing the loyalty missions for each of the crew members, you kind of unlock more of the story. And then, of course, doing those loyalty missions has an impact on the end of the game. I'm not going to say it's quite as cut and dry as... Yeah, I'm not going to say it's quite as cut and dry, because like in Mass Effect 2, it was like, if you do the story, they don't die. If you don't do the story, then they do die. That's not the case here. It is truly Pan Am is just another person in Night City, and your interactions with her will, you know, unlock different parts of culture in Night City. But bringing it back in to just the character herself, she is very smart. She's like a really top-notch mechanic. She's really good at repairing stuff. A lot of her early quests are, got to, work on her car and things like that. Being a nomad, obviously, your ride is your life. They're basically cyberpunk Vikings. And so think about the way that cyberpunk Vikings look at their like axe or their ship, right? Their long ship. That's their cred, right? So that's a really fun part for her. And again, I don't really want to spoil a lot of her storyline, but she is one of those characters where you can really spend a lot of time with her. Some awesome moments. And honestly, some of my favorite moments with her are just like driving in the car, and you'll get to just chat with her during your ride, and you'll just learn a little bit about her, and you can see that she's kind of a person torn between, she's at this point in her life where she's got to kind of choose what type of life she wants to live.
Yeah.
And all in all, I just really liked her overall character, her whole vibe, and she's a really cool character. If you're male V, you can romance her. So if you really want to get in there.
All right. Woohoo.
Yeah.
Get ready for that.
I was playing as female V, so this was kind of like the I'm gonna be friends with you forever kind of deal. But it's definitely next runner-up, Pan Am, Cyberpunk 2077. Great character, great time. Do her side missions. Definitely worth the time.
Okay. Good call out. Good call. Good pick. I'm excited to get a chance to interact with her then.
Yes.
Because I know nothing. I don't know anything about a Pan Am. So,
have you played at all yet?
Yeah, I've been playing.
Okay, you've been playing some. Okay, just
I just have not gotten to that point. No.
Yeah, you have to run into her. Like you have to kind of like do some side stuff before you hit her. It's not super. It's not like Pan Am calls you up and is like, "Hey, come say hello." Like you kind of meet her during a side quest. So yeah, do those side quests. I think they're called side gigs. Those are worth it.
Yeah. That's why it takes me so long, because I do those. Because I'm somewhat of a completionist, unfortunately.
So you'll get her. You'll find
her. My next runner-up this is going to be a fun conversation. Ellie, yes, it is. Ellie from The Last of Us Part 2.
No.
Yes.
No.
Yes.
Listen. All right. First off, before you go, I want you to know everyone's like, oh, which Last of Us Part 2 character Seth's got at the top of his list? He's got Pan Am and Bobby. He's got to have a Last of Us 2 character. No, I'm not giving any of those Last of Us Part 2 characters any of these favorite character awards. Why? Because they're Garbo characters. Every one of them are absolute doo-doo humans. There is not a single character, not a single character in that whole game that is a good person. All of them suck. All of them suck. And you say to yourself like, oh, but what about the really important character? No, he sucked in the first game. The first game was about how much he sucked. This game is about how much everybody else sucks. So no, I reject your claim. Next up.
Nope, you can't. You got to sit here and deal with it. Nope.
Actually, I am curious. Why Ellie? Because she's the worst. Let's be clear.
And let's also be clear too. I'm not going to give any spoilers out to this game. So if you haven't had a chance to play it, do not worry about that. I'm with Seth. We will have time to talk about potentially stuff that we can't avoid later on in other episodes. But
yeah.
One of these, a Last of Us character was going to end up on my list. Maybe more. We'll find out in a minute. I put Ellie as one of my runners up because I'm trying to figure out the best way to describe or say this. Piggybacking off of you, Seth, I put her on the list because to certain extents, these people in this game are garbage. And
yes.
But as we've talked about in other episodes here of Game of the Year, this world isn't sunshine and rainbows by any stretch of the imagination. And as much as I love, the Fall Guys and these creatives and fun characters, like, yay, happy fun times, whatever. Video games are an art. I truly believe that. And having the chance to see some tougher choices and tougher decisions that are made in these games. And seeing, one of the things that I like and I appreciate in my games, just like a lot of people do in their movies and their TV shows and whatnot, are characters that aren't just like one face or one side of a coin, that are very much multifaceted, and the ones that make you wonder when tough decisions arise, like what are they going to do and how are they going to react to it, and how is that going to affect them, whether good or bad or ugly, it doesn't matter. And I think Ellie is one of those characters that truly does it for me. Yes, we know her journey from the original Last of Us. We've played and seen through that, but excuse me, her journey through The Last of Us Part 2 is so much more multifaceted, and I don't think I'm underselling it, Seth. You can back me up on this when I say that there is a lot of shit that is thrown at Ellie, and there's a large part of me that feels like the way she handles that is probably, I would make a sure bet that that's probably what anybody else in that same situation would do, or how they would feel.
It's hard to keep track of everything in that game because it's truly just like piles of shit throwing piles of shit at other piles of shit, and then that pile of shit throwing more piles of shit back. So what you end up getting is just a giant shit pool of everyone sucks here.
But it's the like Naughty Dog is one of the things that they are very good at is character development, especially as you can, like, you go back to their earlier works, you can see that focus on character development get better and better and better and better and better at each release, each game that they release. And The Last of Us Part 2 again is the top. It is the tip top of character development in video games, and how they handle Ellie, and how they handle the supporting cast, and the nuances, and like when, how your impression of a character at first may become totally different at the end. Or it may change multiple times throughout the entire game based on what they do and how you perceive those things and those actions to be. And that's what makes Ellie such a great character, and that's, again, as we change this, that's what makes her one of my favorite characters, because of all the stuff and the trials and tribulations that she has to go through in The Last of Us Part 2, and kind of how she handles that, and really what that ultimately does to her is just, we've talked about it in other episodes. It's hard. It's like mind-blowing to see that type of stuff laid out in a game, and it's just so hard sometimes to focus and deal with and understand, because you would think, you're thinking to yourself, I would never do that, or I would do that, and like having to see and come out with the potential justifications for why that was done or wasn't done, and what those ramifications are with Ellie, and the way that the game portrays it. And I'll touch on that later. Like the way that game portrays it and how it handles it with you, the player. There are moments where you feel for her. There are moments where you don't, and you're like, ooh. But Ellie as a character made me think a lot about her and her journey throughout that entire game, even when I didn't have the controller in my hands and I was thinking about what happened in the game. And again, that's kudos to the great character development that Naughty Dog put into these characters for this game. And it's one of the reasons she's on my list. Runner-up, Ellie, The Last of Us Part 2. Yeah. I mean, I got more, but I don't want to suck up the air in the room, so...
no, I think that is we're not going to joke around here and say that The Last of Us isn't going to pop up a lot in some of these categories. Like, it's A big one. And so I think that there's a lot to be said. We have a very specific category that revolves around particular moments that might be where we get a little bit deeper into some more spoiler-like territory. So if you're interested in like our actual thoughts behind like why are these characters our favorite, I wouldn't be surprised if there's a correlation between favorite moment and favorite character. So check out that. I'd say that's a complimentary episode to this one in a lot of ways. But all in all, we have got our runners up. Now it is time for the big kahuna, the big winner.
It is.
This is our number one favorite character of the year. And mine is Johnny Silverhand. Let me tell you about Johnny Silverhand. He is played by Keanu Reeves.
Really? I could not have.
No. Okay, so the way that I know Johnny Silverhand was going to be the top of this list is I remember when I first met him in Cyberpunk. I hated his guts inside and out. I hated him so much. I was like, oh God, they got Keanu Reeves and they're making him do this. I hate it. And because he really does come into that story as like Angst Lord 2077. Like he is just the angstiest, drunken, horrible doo-doo human. And I hated him. And I was like, because my goal in that game was to get to him as soon as possible because I was like, I don't want to miss any moments where like Johnny might be in the scene, with me, talking about something. And so I was like, I want to get to the Johnny Silverhand part as quickly as I can. So I beeline the story till I got him. And then I was like, oh, good. So I got this guy with me. But I'm actually glad that I had him there for a majority of it because and again, not going to spoil any part of the game, but I'll just go ahead and say Johnny Silverhand plays a large part in a majority of Cyberpunk's story. So I'm to dodge the big ones here, but you meet Johnny and very quickly he is a character that you can pretty much see anywhere, right? Like he could pop up. And what's crazy is that Johnny pops up at places you really wouldn't expect him to. Like you'll just walk through a door and he'll just be hanging out in the room or whatever, right? And there's plot reasons why he's able to do that, but all in all, what I found as I went through Johnny's storyline, I found that he was one of those. So I'll kind of contrast it with like The Last of Us, right? One of my criticisms for The Last of Us characters, like genuine criticisms, was that I don't feel like those characters go through any kind of like journey, right? Like they kind of see the consequences of their actions and they kind of just like, it's kind of like kids getting caught doing something wrong. They like immediately like, oh, I'm going to be really good, and like until that tendency kind of comes back out in them. Right. And so I felt like a lot of those characters just felt very like they weren't going through any changes. The world was just hitting them and they were adapting to live in this new world. Right. Whereas when I looked at Johnny's a character that, like, at the very beginning, he's in a crappy situation. He hates being in this situation, and he kind of wants the worst case scenario for you because he wants to be out of his situation, right? But the thing that you discover as you go through this game is not only are you growing and kind of learning to accept, to see the world that you're living in now, like with Johnny and dealing with all the story that, this whole world that you're wrapped up in Cyberpunk and in Night City, but you're also watching Johnny kind of, I'm not going to say grow up because he is still a man-child, but you're seeing Johnny kind of reflect on his choices and the way he does things. And I wouldn't say that he gets better. Like it's not that he really, it's not like Luke Skywalker where at the end he's like super badass, like, if anything, he's the badass early on and then kind of becomes a little bit more empathetic. But you really see a guy that has a strong set of virtues and morals that are not really virtuous and not very moral. But for him, that's his like code, right? Like he lives by this code. And you see him start to understand that like his code isn't necessarily the right way to live life. It's okay to have beliefs and not like certain things and not be happy with the way that things are, but also there are ways to go about it that are smart, and then there are ways to go about it that are dumb. So all in all, like, I was kind of joking, but not really. Like, Keanu really does bring something unique to this role. This is a character that I don't think, like, if it was just a Nolan North, generic, dude character, I don't think it would have brought a lot of like uniqueness to the role. It would have felt just like another primary NPC.
They got another big name to play this really important NPC in the game.
Yeah, and it could have easily just been like an overly designed character, but like having Keanu Reeves be the actual face of Johnny Silverhand. He's the motion capture, he's the audio, everything about it. And it truly is. It's Keanu Reeves. It's that kind of like, not quite John Wick, but kind of on that level. And you go from that to something that's way more empathetic and someone that's trying their best to deal with what they're dealing with. And there's a part way late in the game, and I'm not gonna spoil anything, but he says something in particular to me, and I was like, ooh, this guy has learned a lot. He would not have said that 15 hours ago. And the fact that he's saying it now means a lot to me. And it made the decision that I was going to make coming up toward the end a lot more impactful, because it really did mean something to know that, like, oh, hey, Johnny is not quite as one-sided as I thought. So again, it's really hard to talk a whole lot about Johnny Silverhand without diving into those late game spoilers, but I don't want to ruin that, especially since that game is pretty much unplayable for a large majority of people. I will say this though, when you get into that game, try and get Johnny as early as you can, because it is fun to see him evolve over the course of the game and kind of learn from his mistakes. So Johnny Silverhand, number one favorite character from this year. Okay. That's a lock.
Okay. Very nice lock. Good. I'm excited to meet him then. I'm really excited. All right.
Oh, you haven't got to Johnny? Ooh.
No.
Well, you got a lot of fun ahead of you. I hope I didn't give too much away.
No, you haven't given anything away.
Okay.
What? I didn't know Johnny Silverhand. Who's that? I didn't know he was in the game. Keanu Reeves. What? No, kidding. I
have to say, it was pretty breathtaking. It's late.
See what you did.
I've had a long day. I need to stop. I need to be stopped. Anyways, Cameron, hit me with your favorite character of 2020.
My favorite character of 2020 is a character that you should know very well, Seth. My favorite character is the cast of The Last of Us. No, I'm kidding.
The entire cast, yep.
My favorite character is Miles Morales from Spider-Man, Miles Morales. I played through I played through The Last of Us Part 2, and I got through Ellie's story, and I was like, that was great conclusion to that story. I'll leave it at that. Miles Morales, I left. I was just so energized that I left that story wanting more. And then everything that I got and how Insomniac handled Miles in his story of, and I don't think this is a spoiler per se, but because if you know Spider-Man, you know Miles, like his story to becoming Spider-Man, like the game is that story for him, and the hurdles and whatnot that he has to live with and come up with, the social discussions within that game that hit a little close to home, especially now in 2020 and 2021, and kind of his it was more so where Ellie was like, a lot of her story is mired in darkness. Like Miles is like he's the hope, that small little light of hope that he learns to use he learns to grow and be more confident in himself. And it was very motivating for me to play as Miles, like personally, to play as Miles and kind of see his, we've seen I'm sure everybody's seen the clips from the first part of the game where like him and Peter are like trying to bring down the Rhino and that whole thing to where he ends up at the end of the game. And it's just it was so awesome to see to see that story told and to see Miles kind of jump through those hoops. I'll definitely say that he didn't have the, I think, character developments and like story points that I think Ellie had in The Last of Us Part 2, not by a long shot. But the fact that they gave him the depth that they did give him, and featuring him as a main character was just really awesome to see. Like the one criticism and caveat that I would actually give to Miles Morales and the game in general is just that it wasn't long enough. I think that, and I'm sure I'll talk about it in a couple of other episodes too. I feel that there are some, from a story standpoint, there are story beats that begin to be hit that, for whatever reason, maybe because they didn't need the game to be as long as it needed to be, or it wasn't a full sequel or whatever, they didn't really flesh on, and so it felt a little bit compressed. And so you didn't let those moments kind of flesh out as much as they did maybe in the original Spider-Man on PlayStation 4. Yeah. And but that being said, like the interactions that he has with his friends and his family and his, like, the random people throughout New York City, and I think one of the big points in this story is his development and becoming from just, Spider-Man's sidekick to Spider-Man, and being, instead of being Spider-Man's sidekick, being the other Spider-Man, if you get what I'm saying there. And I don't, I'm not going to go on a full tirade, but it made me think a lot of when one of the points I thought about was Thor. The female Thor in the comic books, and the fact of, like, it wasn't like, she's not called Lady Thor or anything like that. She is called Thor. When you look at her comics, she is Thor. The only context is that we have to make, when we're talking about Thor, we're saying, okay, female Thor, we have to make that connotation so you know who I'm talking about. But we're not saying, oh, Lady Thor and Thor were great. It's like, Thor and Thor. And I think that was the evolution with Miles, is that it's Spider-Man and Spider-Man. They're both Spider-Man. But this is, the kid, the Spider-Man kid, whatever you want to call it. The Spider-Man in the different suit. I don't know. It's Spider-Man with the shock powers.
Like it's kind of similar, like with Robin. Like, there are multiple Robins, but they're always Robin, right? And a general non-comic reader doesn't really know all of that per se, but they know that Robin is a really cool and awesome character. And I think that what you do with Miles is you go a step further, right? Instead of being like, oh, here's these three generic dudes that we could, like, kind of swap in. They each have their own weird, tragic backstory. But, like, at the end of the day, they're all kind of the same type of person. I think Miles and Peter are, like, super different. So it was really cool to see them take that same approach, but apply it very differently to, like, two very different people. And while Miles embodies the spirit of Spider-Man, he also brings his own, like, fresh, unique take to it. Mm-hmm. And I felt like that game was him discovering what that take is, like, being like, I'm not Peter 2, I am Miles, and
exactly,
this is me.
Exactly. And that's what I really appreciated about how Insomniac treated that character, because this could have been, easily another write-off, another cash grab, just slap Spider-Man's name on the box and move along. But I think that everything they did with Miles, from him as a character, even like how the gameplay plays into his character, where he has the shock powers, and like before in the original Spider-Man, where you relied a lot on your gadgets, in Miles Morales, you relied a lot, like those shock powers you own. Like, I love those more than the gadgets, dude. I had those. You were owning people with the shock abilities there, and the Venom shock,
the Venom power. Yep.
And so I'm really excited to see his story continue in the larger Spider-Man story. And that is why Miles Morales is my winner for favorite character. Okay, favorite character.
Very nice. Spoiler alert, he's in my runners-up.
Okay.
I almost gave him my number 2 spot because I thought, for many of the reasons that you just discussed. The reason I didn't is I kind of felt like Miles isn't a character from, like, I liked Miles before the video game, right? Like
Hmm.
I liked Miles in the comics, I liked Miles Into the Spider-Verse, and I think they did a good job of like bringing the Miles that I'd seen in those two mediums into a video game. And so it didn't like invalidate my love for Miles. I just was like, I kind of feel like I was already in love with Miles, so he didn't like captivate me as a character when I saw him in a video game. So it's just kind of like, it's like if it would be like me putting like Iron Man in my number one favorite character. Like, yes, technically he was in the Avengers video game this year, but like, do I love Iron Man because he was in the video game, or do I love Iron Man because I already loved it? Yeah, kind of weird. So that was sliding into my follow-ups for like these honorable mentions. He's definitely my first honorable mention. I wanted to explain a little bit
Okay.
why. But yeah, it does kind of suck that I like gave it to Bobby.
Why not? This is favorite
Bob-omb's side
character.
character.
It'd be who it's favorite
I
character.
will
That's all I'm
say
changing.
Miles Morales is definitely wins the Seth should have given him award, but he didn't award. Because yeah, I mean, sorry, go ahead.
No, you're up.
Yeah, I mean, just talking about Miles, like it is so refreshing when you can take the archetype of a character. Same thing has been done before. I would say, you know, like Rey from the new Star Wars films was that idea of like, what if we made Luke 2? And then someone was like, what if we don't do that and we make someone unique and make them their own character instead of trying to like make Luke 2? And that's kind of what I felt with Miles. And in this, and again, Miles has been around for a lot longer than this game has. But
Hmm.
one of the things about this game that I really liked and I appreciated, and I'm not going to lie to myself and say that this wasn't a game that was perfect for the PlayStation 5 launch, but also this is a game I feel like they didn't have to make, right? They could have gone straight to Spider-Man 2, launched it, you know, within the next year or two, and that game could have started like, oh
Yeah.
man, Miles and Peter swinging, you know, like basically like that opening of Miles Morales was, but like with all of you know, the kind of the whole point of that game is Miles kind of coming to his own, right? And so at the end of the game, like Miles is kind of considered by all of New York to be Spider-Man just as much as Peter is, right? And so he's not the other Spider-Man in that negative way. He's like Spider-Man. So, and you've already talked about that, but
Yeah.
they could have easily like skipped this game and just gone straight into that, and we would have all been like, "Oh, cool! So Miles is like part of the fam now. Awesome, good to see that happen." But it was really cool. They took time to show his own story, his own villain. You know, I was like, man, I don't know about the Tinkerer, man. That's a little fringe. Like, that's a little fringe when you got the main game over here with, you know, the Sinister Six kind of vibe going on with it.
Yeah.
So I was a little worried because it did start to smell a little like that DLC quick out kind of game, but I think that this is a cool game. And yeah, the scope's a little bit narrower than Spider-Man was, but also I think the message it was trying to send here was a lot more impactful. And boy, what a great game for 2020, right? Like all the things that we were dealing with in 2020 with Black Lives Matter and whatnot, to see that pretty much play out in a really like unique and not like on the nose way, but like just really tackling that straightforward was like a really cool and refreshing approach. I know it wasn't designed that way, but like it's really, I'll say this, I am glad that Miles has become a thing. It is
I
between
am
Into the
too.
Spider-Verse and the video game, like Miles
I'm
is
too.
what Spider-Man needed. And I'm so glad that we're going to go into this, you know, this future of the Spider-Man Marvel game franchise with him right there with Peter. So, and rant on Miles Morales. My next honorable mention.
We gotta do the wrap up before we jump into the other
wrap
honourable mentions here. Wrap ups here.
My bad.
We gotta let people clear it up here. So, guys, to wrap up here, favorite character, winner for myself is Miles Morales from Spider-Man Miles Morales with Fall Guys and Ellie from The Last of Us Part 2 as the runners up. For Seth, winner in this category is Johnny Silverhand from Cyberpunk 2077, with Pan Am from Cyberpunk 2077 and Bobby from Paper Mario as his runners up as well. We give them lovely claps as whatnot. Now, time for a couple of quick honorable mentions. Seth, I will give it back to you. You may continue.
Yes. So this was the year where I realized I didn't play the games that I wanted to play this year. There are a lot of characters that I know would have probably made my list had I played their games. Two of the most egregious examples are Half-Life Alyx and Yakuza Like a Dragon.
Oh, yeah. Wow, you didn't play Yakuza? I thought you already played.
I didn't play Yakuza.
Wow, okay.
So I chose to go with I chose to go with Assassin's Creed because I was really excited about that, and I have a hunch about some characters in that game, but I still haven't beat it because it's an insanely long game. So again, like that's another game I feel like there would have been characters that made my list, but I haven't seen how their arcs resolve yet. Mm-hmm. So I only really felt comfortable like talking about characters that I've like seen the arc. You know, I don't want to play the first 5 hours of BioShock and be like, Atlas is my favorite character. Because you actually find out he's a shitbag later on. And so that's why I was a little squeamish about it. However, my first honorable mention, I feel pretty confident, even though I haven't like fully beat this game. I've seen a lot of this game, and that is Zagreus from Hades, which is the character you play as. Okay. His character is really cool, and again, we've talked about this, and I think we talked about this game a little bit in one of our previous episodes, but the way the narrative is kind of given to you in Hades is so cool and unique, and Zagreus is one of those characters that you really start to, like, his performance is spot on. He... in these conversations, and you know, you can talk to tons of different characters, right? Like you can just go up and talk to Hades himself, right? Like the main antagonist of the game, you can talk to every run. And just to see his interactions with these characters, I just think Zagreus was like a really well-performed character. I haven't beaten the game how his arc concludes. That's why I put him in my honorable mentions list. But I'm pretty sure he would have made this list if I had been able to beat that game. I know Ichiban Kasuga would have made this list if I had played that game. Ichiban is me. I keep hearing about him, and I'm like, those are the qualities that I try to embody in myself. Or I like trying to see the best in people, trying to have fun in life and enjoy the things that you're doing. And in Half-Life Alyx, I just really wish I could play that game. I really wish that it wasn't VR only, because I am a huge Half-Life fan. I want to play that game, and I know there are characters in that game. I would love to see Alyx go through her arc. I would love to see some of the other auxiliary characters that I've heard about from podcasts and whatnot, but I've kind of like not touching that game until I can play it in VR, because I don't want to just watch a playthrough. I want to experience it myself.
I think you have to experience that game. I really do.
Really do. So
I want to experience
it. My only other Miles Morales and Zagreus are the only two that I can like confidently say. I would like to say that Eivor would be on here, but I also don't know if Eivor's a shitbag yet. So I've got to see.
I would have put Eivor on here too if I had. I need more time.
I will say the character that I am getting a hunch might have topped this list for me is Basim from Assassin's Creed Valhalla.
Oh, yes, okay.
I get this vibe from Basim that there's a lot more to him than he's letting on. And I know the way that Assassin's Creed like structures its narrative that I'm not going to find anything out into the last 30 minutes of the game. So I've got 120 or 130 hours
before you can fully experience
I can really get to that. But I have a feeling that Basim would have topped this list, been very close to the top of this list if I knew, if my hunch is right about his involvement in the Assassin's Creed lore, but then also like if I had gotten to that in the game. So
okay. Quick run-throughs here of my favorite characters. You haven't had a chance to play the game yet. Shame on you.
Yep, I know.
Jin Sakai from Ghost of Tsushima. Yep. Kind of his... the journey he's gone through has been really great to see. I want to play more of the game, so I really haven't. I didn't want to put him as a favorite character yet. Surprised this never crossed your mind either, Seth. You might kick yourself in the shin for this. Isabel from Animal Crossing: New Horizons.
Thought about that. She kind of fell in the same category of like, I've always liked Isabel and all the Animal Crossing, so it felt like a cheap one for me.
I've never played an Animal Crossing until 2020. So
okay.
I put Isabel in there because I just love seeing her motivational and inspiring messages every time I boot it up, depending on whatever day is it. And then the last characters, I guess I'm going to put on here are the Ronin twins, Allison and Tyler from Tell Me Why, the game from Don't Nod. I've really enjoyed their story. Their character development has been really great to see. I've only beaten the first chapter, and I have the other two chapters to go before I can fully see kind of how their arc goes through, how their arc concludes, as it were.
Yeah, this category is Revenge of the Backlog. This is where your backlog comes and gets you if you didn't finish it.
A couple of these categories for this part are. I think so. But that is it, guys. That is our runners up, and that is it for our picks for favorite character here in episode 7, guys. As always, stay tuned. The next episode that's going to be coming up here, if you're keeping track, is episode 8. I think there are going to be some great conversations, and I'm going to go ahead and put on the spoiler warning right now because I feel like we're not going to get away from them. Next episode is Best Moment, which is going to be a whole lot of fun to talk about our best moments in 2020. So stay tuned, guys. Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back in just a minute.